The small exploration vessel Pioneer drifted silently through the uncharted region of space. Captain Jack Smith stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the vast emptiness beyond the viewscreen. This mission was supposed to be routine: map the sector, check for resources, and return to New Terra. Nothing exciting ever happened on these missions. Not anymore. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Officer Tom Reed called from his science station. His fingers danced across the control panel, brow furrowed in concentration. "What kind of strange, Reed?" Jack asked, turning away from the view screen. "A signal, sir. Faint but definitely artificial. And..." Reed paused, rechecking his readings. "Sir, it's using an old Earth military frequency. One we haven't used in decades." Jack moved to the science station, looking over Reed's shoulder at the display. "That's impossible. There's nothing human out here. The signal's coming from that asteroid field, about 500,000 kilometers ahead," Reed said, pointing to a cluster of space rocks on the screen. Jack straightened up. "Change course. Let's take a closer look." "Sir," his first officer objected, "our orders specifically tell us to avoid uncharted regions like this." "The treaty with the Vorn." "The treaty allows for scientific exploration," Jack cut in. "And that's what we're doing. Exploring an unusual signal." The Pioneer altered course, moving deeper into the asteroid field. The signal grew stronger as they approached its source. "I'm getting a visual," Reed announced. The main screen flickered, and the bridge crew fell silent. Nestled between two large asteroids floated a massive ship. Its dark hull was scarred with battle damage, but the design was unmistakable: a human warship. And not just any warship. That's impossible," whispered Anna White, the military historian assigned to their mission. She stared at the screen, her face pale. "That's the USS Defiant." "The Defiant?" Jack asked. "The ship that disappeared during the Vorn War?" Anna nodded slowly. "The pride of the human fleet. The most advanced warship ever built. It vanished with all hands during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. That was 70 years ago." "Life signs?" Jack asked Reed. "None that I can detect," the science officer replied. "But there's minimal power running through some systems. And the hull is intact. The ship hasn't been destroyed, just waiting." Jack made his decision. "Prepare a boarding party. I want to know how humanity's most legendary warship ended up here, and why it's still in one piece after 70 years. 2 hours later, Jack led a team through the airlock connecting the Pioneer to the Defiant. Their flashlights cut through the darkness of the massive ship's corridors. The air was stale but breathable, life support was still functioning at a minimal level. "This is impossible," Anna said, running her gloved hand along a wall. "The ship should have lost power decades ago." They made their way to the bridge, finding it empty and dark. Jack approached the central command console and brushed away a layer of dust. "Let's see if we can access the logs," he said. As his fingers touched the console, lights suddenly flickered on throughout the bridge. A holographic projection appeared before them, a woman in an old Earth military uniform. "Human biological signatures detected," the hologram said. "Initiating security protocols." "Ship's AI," Anna whispered. "I've only read about them." "Identify yourselves," the AI demanded. "Captain Jack Smith of the exploration vessel Pioneer," Jack replied. "We're from New Terra Colony." The AI seemed to process this information. "Time since last human contact, 73 years, 4 months, 17 days. Situation assessment required. Accessing main computer." More lights came on as systems throughout the ship began activating. "Captain," Reed called urgently from a nearby console. "I'm detecting power spikes throughout the ship. Life support is coming online at full capacity. And these readings? He looked up, eyes wide. There are stasis pods active in the crew quarters. Hundreds of them. They're alive? Jack asked in disbelief. The AI answered, the crew of the USS Defiant, including Admiral John Wilson, were placed in emergency stasis when the ship encountered a temporal anomaly during battle with Vorn forces. The ship was designed to protect them until rescue could be effected. Anna stepped forward. You've been waiting for 70 years? The temporal displacement was unexpected, the AI replied. Internal chronometers indicate only 3 months have passed aboard the Defiant since the Battle of Proxima Centauri. A warning alarm suddenly blared from Reed's scanner. Captain, we've got multiple ships approaching at high speed. Based on their energy signatures. He hesitated, they're Vorn warships. Jack looked at the dormant crew of Earth's greatest warship, heroes of a war long past, suspended in time and now found. Heroes about to wake up to a very different galaxy than the one they left behind. Begin revival procedures for Admiral Wilson, he ordered the AI. It looks like the war isn't as over as we thought. The stasis pod hissed open, releasing a cloud of cold vapor. Admiral John Wilson gasped, his eyes fluttering open for the first time in 70 years. Dr. Lisa Green, the Defiant's chief medical officer who had been revived minutes earlier, stood by with medical equipment ready. Easy, Admiral, she said, helping him sit up. The revival process can be disorienting. Admiral Wilson, a tall man with a weathered face and a commanding presence even in his weakened state, surveyed the unfamiliar faces around him. Report, he demanded, his voice hoarse. What happened to my ship? Captain Jack Smith stepped forward. Sir, I'm Captain Smith of the exploration vessel Pioneer. We found the Defiant drifting in an asteroid field. According to your ship's AI, you were caught in some kind of temporal anomaly during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. How long? Wilson asked, his eyes sharp despite his physical weakness. Anna White, the historian, answered. 73 years, Admiral. The war with the Vorn ended shortly after your disappearance. Wilson processed this information with remarkable composure. And Earth? Our colonies? Jack and Anna exchanged glances. We survived, sir. But the peace terms were harsh. Human military technology has been severely restricted. We're essentially under Vorn control now. Wilson's face hardened. Not for long. Not if the Defiant has returned. He turned to Dr. Green. Wake Engineer Davis. We need the ship's systems online immediately. Sir, Jack interrupted, there are 3 Vorn ships approaching. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Wilson stood, shaking off Dr. Green's concerned hand. Then we have 19 minutes to get this ship ready for battle. The next quarter hour was a blur of activity. Engineer Mike Davis, a burly man whose genius had designed much of the Defiant's advanced systems, worked furiously at the engine controls while more crew members were selectively revived. The Vorn ships are hailing us, Reed reported from the communication station. On screen, Wilson ordered, now standing proud in his reconstructed uniform on the Defiant's bridge. A reptilian face appeared on the view screen. Human vessels, you have entered restricted space and accessed forbidden military technology. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Wilson stepped forward. This is Admiral John Wilson of the United Earth Fleet. The USS Defiant is sovereign Earth territory under my command. The Vorn commander's eyes narrowed. The Wilson? Impossible. Surrender the vessel immediately or be destroyed. The Defiant doesn't surrender, Wilson replied calmly. Not 70 years ago, and not today. The transmission cut off. Jack looked nervously at Wilson. Admiral, our ship can't withstand Vorn weapons. The Pioneer is just an exploration vessel. Then stay behind us, Wilson said as the Defiant's weapon systems came online. It's time humanity remembered how to fight back. The 3 Vorn ships launched their attack, energy beams slicing toward the Defiant. But instead of the expected destruction, the beams dissipated harmlessly against an invisible barrier. Shield technology, Wilson explained to the astonished Jack. One of many advances the Defiant was testing before we vanished. Engineer Davis grinned from his station. Weapons are hot, Admiral. Just like old times. Fire, Wilson commanded. The Defiant's response was swift and devastating. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out, cutting through the lead Vorn ship as if it were paper. The other 2 ships tried to retreat, but the Defiant's targeting systems were too fast, too precise. In less than a minute, the battle was over. Where 3 Vorn warships had been, only debris remained. Wilson turned to Jack, whose face showed both awe and horror. Captain Smith, I believe I've just restarted a war. The Defiant's arrival at New Terra caused chaos. As the legendary warship entered orbit alongside the Pioneer, the colony's defense grid automatically locked onto the unidentified military vessel. This is how they welcome Earth's greatest warship? Admiral Wilson asked, standing on the Defiant's bridge. They don't know what to make of you, Captain Smith replied. The Defiant is a relic from a more independent time. The communications officer called out, incoming transmission from the surface. The main screen displayed a stern-faced man in a formal suit. This is President Robert Brown of New Terra. Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately. Admiral Wilson stepped forward. President Brown, I am Admiral John Wilson of the USS Defiant. We've returned after 70 years. The President's composed expression faltered momentarily. Admiral Wilson died 70 years ago. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Wilson replied dryly. We were caught in a temporal anomaly. Request permission to dock and debrief colony leadership. 6 hours later, Wilson found himself in a tense meeting with President Brown, General James Lee of the Colony Defense Force, and Ambassador Alan Gray, the human representative to the Vorn Empire. You destroyed 3 Vorn patrol ships? Ambassador Gray's voice rose in alarm. Do you understand what you've done? The treaty explicitly forbids human possession of military technology that exceeds Vorn-approved limitations. A treaty signed after I disappeared, Wilson replied calmly. A treaty I never agreed to. General Lee leaned forward. Admiral, with all due respect, times have changed. We can't afford another war with the Vorn. The first one nearly destroyed us. And this piece is destroying you slowly instead, Wilson countered. He activated a holographic projector, displaying data from the Defiant's computers. The Vorn deliberately created the anomaly that trapped my ship. They were trying to capture our technology, not destroy it. President Brown studied the data. Even if that's true, it was 70 years ago. The Vorn haven't changed, Wilson insisted. According to your own intelligence reports, they've been building up their forces along your borders for years while restricting your development. They're preparing for something. Ambassador Gray shook his head. Speculation and paranoia. We've maintained peace for decades. Peace? Wilson scoffed. You mean submission. I've seen your colony's infrastructure, your restricted shipyards, your limited defenses. This isn't peace. It's controlled occupation. General Lee's communication device beeped. His face went pale as he read the message. Mr. President, a Vorn battle fleet has just jumped into the system. They're demanding we surrender the Defiant and its crew immediately. President Brown turned to Wilson, his expression grave. It seems your return has forced our hand, Admiral. What would you have us do? Before Wilson could answer, the Defiant's AI contacted him through his personal communicator. Admiral, we've completed the analysis of the Vorn communications. They've been transmitting coded messages throughout human space since our reappearance. What kind of messages? Wilson asked. Military coordinates. Fleet movements. Attack plans that predate our arrival, the AI replied. They were already preparing for war, Admiral. They just didn't expect you to return and disrupt their timeline. Wilson looked up at the colony leadership. The Vorn were never going to honor your peace treaty. They were just waiting until you were too weak to resist. The question isn't whether to fight. He straightened his uniform. The question is whether humanity still remembers how. Outside the government building, humans gathered in the streets, staring up at the massive Vorn ships darkening the sky, and at the legendary Defiant, a ghost from humanity's more defiant past, hovering protectively between them. You have 24 hours to surrender the Defiant and its crew, the message from Vorn High Commander Rax boomed through New Terra's communication systems. The reptilian commander's face filled public screens across the colony, his scales gleaming under the lights of his command ship. Any resistance will be met with total force. Inside the colony's command center, Admiral Wilson worked quickly with the Defiant's crew. We need to use this time wisely, he told President Brown. My communications officer has compiled all our historical records and battle data. What good will that do? Ambassador Gray asked, still advocating for surrender. The truth is our most powerful weapon right now, Wilson replied. He turned to Kevin Ross, the young communications specialist from the Pioneer who had volunteered to help. Can you broadcast to all human colonies simultaneously? The Vorn monitor all our channels, General Lee objected. Let them watch, Wilson said. They've been hiding the truth long enough. Within hours, the broadcast began. Screens across human space lit up with images from the Defiant's records, the real history of the war 70 years ago. The records showed Vorn ships deliberately targeting human research stations years before the official conflict began. They revealed Vorn spies sabotaging human technological developments. Most damning of all, the records contained detailed scans of Vorn communications proving they had engineered the war specifically to halt humanity's rapid advancement. For decades, the Vorn have claimed they fought us in self-defense, Wilson's voice narrated over the footage. The truth is they feared our potential. They saw how quickly we advanced and realized that within a generation, we would surpass them. Dr. Ben Hall, a scientist who studied Vorn technology, confirmed the revelation. This explains everything, he told President Brown as they watched together. Vorn technology has barely changed in 70 years. They've been forcing us backward while standing still themselves. As the broadcast continued, a message arrived from a secure channel. Sam Woods, leader of an underground human resistance movement, requested an urgent meeting. We've been fighting the Vorn in shadows for years, Woods told Wilson when they met in a secure bunker. Your return changes everything. People are waking up all across human space. Indeed, reports were flooding in from other colonies. Protests against Vorn oversight had begun. Military personnel were refusing to enforce Vorn regulations. High Commander Rax is moving up his timeline, General Lee reported, rushing into the room. The Vorn fleet is powering weapons. They're not waiting 24 hours. President Brown looked at the faces around him, then straightened his shoulders. Admiral Wilson, consider New Terra's defense forces under your command. It's time humanity stood up again. Outside, the first Vorn missiles streaked through the atmosphere toward the colony below. The sky above New Terra burned with the exchange of weapons fire. The Defiant soared through the chaos, its advanced shields absorbing hits that would have destroyed any other human vessel. But it was only one ship against dozens of Vorn attackers. We can't be everywhere at once, Admiral Wilson said as the Defiant shuddered from a direct hit. Our shields are holding, but the colony defenses are failing. Captain Frank Taylor's voice crackled over the communication system. This is the Guardian. We've lost our port shields. Can't take another hit like that last one. Engineer Mike Davis looked up from his console on the Defiant. Admiral, I have an idea. The shield technology, we could adapt a simpler version for the other ships. How quickly? Wilson asked. With the right help, hours instead of days. Wilson nodded. Do it. He turned to communications. Captain Taylor, pull back to the following coordinates. We're going to upgrade your shields. While the battle raged above, Davis and Dr. Mary Jones, a colony expert in reverse engineering, worked frantically in the Guardian's engine room. They bypassed safety systems and rerouted power conduits, creating a crude but effective version of the Defiant's shield technology. It won't be as strong, Davis warned as they completed the work. Maybe 40% of the Defiant's capacity. But it should hold against their standard weapons. Captain Taylor's upgraded ship rejoined the battle, surviving hits that had crippled it before. Other ship captains noticed immediately. Whatever you did to the Guardian, we need it too, they called. Kevin Ross, the communications specialist, had an inspiration. We can transmit the shield modifications to all ships simultaneously. They can implement while continuing to fight. Within 2 hours, the surviving human defense vessels had been upgraded. The Vorn, expecting a quick victory, found themselves in a prolonged battle against increasingly resilient opponents. High Commander Rax slammed his fist against his command chair. Impossible. How are their shields suddenly matching ours? On the Defiant, Admiral Wilson allowed himself a small smile. Now for Phase 2. He turned to his tactical officer. Activate the jump tracker. The officer looked confused. Sir, the Vorn believe FTL jumps can't be tracked. It's their primary tactical advantage. Another lie they've maintained, Wilson replied. The Defiant can track their jump signatures. And now, so can every ship we've upgraded. As Rax ordered reinforcements from nearby Vorn systems, Wilson's fleet prepared. The moment the Vorn reinforcements arrived, they found not the expected battle aftermath, but a prepared human fleet waiting precisely where they emerged. The shocked Vorn reinforcements, caught completely by surprise, never had a chance to raise their shields. News of New Terra's successful defense spread across human space like wildfire. What began as resistance became revolution. In the colony's command center, Admiral Wilson met with newly appointed Admiral Jane Addams, the commander who had united the scattered human defense fleets. Her expression was determined, her uniform hastily adorned with new rank insignia. We have the momentum, she said, studying the tactical display showing human space. But we can't give the Vorn time to regroup. Wilson nodded. We need to strike their main military base in this sector. Cut off their ability to coordinate. Agent Pete Black, a human spy who had operated in Vorn territory for years, stepped forward from the shadows. His face bore the scars of surgeries to make him appear more Vorn-like. The Vorn Empire isn't as united as they want us to believe, Black reported. Many subject species are watching what's happening here. They're ready to rise up if we prove the Vorn can be defeated. Adams looked at President Brown. We could free not just our people, but others under Vorn control. Brown hesitated. This was about defending ourselves. Are we talking about dismantling the entire Vorn Empire now? We're talking about justice, Wilson replied simply. For 70 years of oppression. The combined human fleet assembled, 30 ships upgraded with Defiant technology, with the legendary warship itself as flagship. They jumped directly to the main Vorn military base overseeing human space, arriving with precision that shocked the Vorn defenders. How did they find us? A Vorn commander demanded as alarms blared throughout the base. How did they coordinate a simultaneous attack from multiple vectors? The battle was swift and decisive. Human ships, once considered primitive by Vorn standards, now moved with deadly efficiency. Within hours, the base was under human control. As Admiral Adams secured the facility, Wilson received an unexpected transmission. The sender identified himself as Vorn Council member Dex. Not all Vorn supported the policies toward humans, Dex said, his scaled face grave on the screen. Some of us have argued for true partnership rather than domination. The hardliners wouldn't listen. Why contact us now? Wilson asked. Because High Commander Rax has convinced the Supreme Council to gather every remaining ship for a final attack on New Terra, Dex explained. They want to make an example of you. But if they fail? Wilson understood. If they fail, the moderates like you take control. Dex nodded. And we negotiate a real peace. Not submission. As Wilson shared this intelligence, reports flooded in. 3 more human colonies had liberated themselves. 2 non-human species had risen against their Vorn overlords. They're coming for New Terra with everything they have, Wilson told the assembled leaders. And when they arrive, we'll be ready. The stars above New Terra vanished as hundreds of Vorn warships filled the sky. High Commander Rax had gathered the largest fleet in Vorn history, their final bid to crush the human rebellion before it sparked an empire-wide revolution. They outnumber us 5-1, Admiral Adams reported in the war room. Colony leaders, military officers, and the Defiant's crew stood around the holographic display showing the massive Vorn armada. Admiral Wilson studied the enemy formations. Numbers aren't everything. Every human ship now carries Defiant technology. We've trained their crews. We're ready. President Brown nodded grimly. All colonies are standing with us. For the first time in 70 years, humanity fights as one. The battle began with a Vorn bombardment that lit up New Terra's atmosphere. Human ships rose to meet them, the Defiant leading the charge. Though outnumbered, the human vessels held their own, their upgraded shields and weapons matching Vorn technology. On the Defiant's bridge, Wilson directed the defense with calm precision. Keep them divided. Don't let them concentrate their fire. 2 hours into the battle, sensors detected new jump signatures. Wilson tensed, expecting Vorn reinforcements, but instead, ships of unfamiliar design appeared. We are the Kalan, announced their commander, a blue-skinned being with 4 eyes. For centuries, we have endured Vorn rule. Today, we fight alongside humans for freedom. Other ships followed, vessels from a dozen subject races of the Vorn Empire, all inspired by humanity's stand. The tide of battle shifted dramatically. High Commander Rax, watching his advantage crumble, roared in fury. Target the Defiant. All ships. Destroy the symbol of their resistance. The Vorn fleet converged on the legendary warship. Even with its advanced technology, the Defiant couldn't withstand such concentrated firepower. Systems failed and hull breaches multiplied. Admiral, Engineer Davis reported, "We can't take much more." Wilson nodded. Plot a collision course with Rax's command ship. Prepare to evacuate the crew. Sir, Davis objected, the Defiant has served its purpose, Wilson finished. It brought us hope when we needed it most. The Defiant, trailing fire and debris, accelerated toward the Vorn flagship. Rax ordered evasive maneuvers too late. The burning human warship crashed into the Vorn command center, destroying both vessels in a blinding explosion. With their command structure shattered and faced with a multi-species rebellion, the remaining Vorn fleet retreated in disarray. Months later, representatives from a dozen species gathered on New Terra to sign the Alliance of Free Worlds Treaty. Council member Dex, now leading a reformed Vorn government, added his signature alongside human leaders. Where the battle had raged fiercest, a memorial now stood, the salvaged bridge of the USS Defiant, preserved as a museum. Inside, young officers from all species studied at the Academy of Interstellar Defense. On a plaque at the entrance, simple words told the story: a single ship, lost to time, returned to change the course of history.